The stars were cold and silent when the human ship drifted into the alien sector. It was not meant to be a warship. It was small, old, and designed only for travel between colonies. But fate pushed it into the territory of the Kethari Empire, one of the most feared powers of the galaxy. Inside the ship sat Ethan Cross, a lone explorer. He was not a soldier, nor a diplomat. He was simply a man who wanted to see what lay beyond human space. His ship had broken navigation, and by mistake, he had crossed a border no human dared to cross. Within hours, alien war cruisers surrounded him, their glowing weapons locked on his fragile vessel. The Kethari did not waste words. They sent a single message: surrender. Ethan, knowing he had no choice, raised his hands as the alien beams pulled his ship into their hangar. When the door opened, Ethan saw them for the first time. The Kethari were tall, their bodies covered in dark armor-like shells. Their eyes glowed green and their faces were sharp, insect-like, with mandibles that clicked when they spoke. Most humans would scream at the sight. Ethan only stared calmly, his face unreadable. The aliens dragged him through their vast halls. The walls pulsed with strange lights, alive like veins under skin. The air smelled of metal and fire. Soldiers stood at every corner watching him with disgust and curiosity. Finally, he was brought into a chamber larger than any he had ever seen. At the far end stood a throne made of black stone, rising high like a mountain. Upon it sat the alien, Queen, Scifi. She was taller than all her guards. Her shell was darker, her crown of horns sharper, her wings folded behind her like a cloak. Her voice echoed through the chamber, deep and cold. So this is the human who dares step into my empire. Ethan looked up at her, and for a moment he said nothing. His eyes studied her without fear. Then, slowly, he bowed. The court gasped. No one bowed to Scifi unless forced. The Queen leaned forward, her claws tapping the armrest. Strange creature, do you not tremble before me? Ethan lifted his head. His face was calm, his lips curved in a faint smile. Why should I tremble? You are a queen, a ruler. That is worthy of respect, not fear. Her mandibles clicked in amusement. Respect? You call me that? Look at me, human. Look at my face. My claws, my shell. Your kind must see me as a nightmare. Even my own kind call me grotesque. She leaned closer, her glowing eyes burning into his. Why call me anything but ugly? The chamber grew quiet. The guards waited for Ethan to cry, to beg, to agree with their queen's words, but Ethan only smiled again, calm and steady. Ugly? He repeated softly. No. You are not ugly. The queen tilted her head, stunned. No one had ever answered her like this. Ethan's voice was gentle but strong enough to carry through the chamber. My people have seen many things. We have seen storms that destroy cities, mountains that crush villages, and scars on our world that last forever. Yet we do not call them ugly. We call them proof of strength, proof of survival. That is beauty, to us. And you sit on that throne after surviving everything. That makes you far more than beautiful. A heavy silence filled the air. The guards shifted nervously. None of them could understand why this fragile human spoke with such boldness. The queen stared at him for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed. The sound was like thunder breaking the sky. Ha! You dare to flatter me? You think your soft words will save you, little human? Ethan shrugged lightly. I do not flatter. I only speak what I see. If you choose to kill me, then so be it. But I will not take back my words. His calmness unsettled her more than fear ever could. The queen rose from her throne, her wings stretching out like shadows covering the hall. She stepped closer, each movement heavy, echoing through the chamber. Standing before him, she was a giant compared to his small human frame. Her claws could tear him apart in a second. Tell me, human, she whispered, her voice low and dangerous. Do you not know who I am? I have burned fleets, I have crushed worlds. My enemies call me a monster, Even my people whisper behind my back calling me hideous. And you? You call me gorgeous? Ethan met her burning gaze without blinking. He did not step back. His voice was steady, filled with something the Queen had not heard in centuries: truth. Yes, because beauty is not in faces or shapes. Beauty is in what survives, in what leads, in what does not break. You are still here. You command fear. You carry scars and strength that none can take. That is why you are beautiful. The Queen froze. For a moment she felt something she had long buried, a sting deep inside her chest. No soldier, no servant, no rival had ever spoken to her like this. Her claws hovered above his head, ready to strike. But instead of crushing him, she pulled back. Her mandibles twitched as she studied his calm smile. "You are either a fool," she murmured, "or the bravest creature I have ever met." Ethan chuckled softly. Perhaps a little of both. The court erupted in whispers. The guards looked at one another in shock. But Seraphis raised her hand and all fell silent. "Take him to the holding chamber," she ordered. "Do not harm him. I wish to question this human further." As the guards dragged Ethan away, he glanced back. For just a moment he thought he saw something flicker in the Queen's glowing eyes. Not anger, not hatred, but something else. Something fragile. Curiosity. And so began the strange bond between a human who smiled at monsters and a queen who had never believed she could be seen as anything but ugly. The stars outside burned cold, but inside the alien palace a fire had been lit. The cell was not what Ethan expected. Instead of a dark and dirty prison, the chamber he was placed in was wide, with tall glowing walls that pulsed with faint green light. The air smelled metallic, but it was clean. The bed was a slab of stone, but soft vines grew upon it almost like a mattress. A small pool of water rested in the corner. For a holding chamber, it was surprisingly alive. Ethan sat on the bed, his hands resting calmly on his knees. He was not chained, he was not beaten. He could move freely inside the glowing walls, but he knew the light itself was the true prison. If he touched it, it would burn. Hours passed. He waited, listening to the faint hum of the alien palace. He wondered if this was the end of his journey, or the beginning of something he had never imagined. The door finally opened. 2 guards entered, their insect-like eyes glowing. They gestured for him to rise. Ethan stood without resistance. The BA guards escorted him through long, twisting halls until they reached a chamber far smaller than the throne room. There, waiting, was Queen Seraphis. This time she was not seated on her great throne. She stood beside a circular table carved with strange markings. Her wings were folded neatly, her crown like horns gleaming under the pale lights. "Sit," she commanded, her voice sharp yet calm. Ethan obeyed, lowering himself onto a stone bench. The guards left, and for the first time he and the Queen were alone. Seraphis studied him in silence for a long moment. Her mandibles twitched slightly, her glowing eyes locked on his calm face. "Human," she finally said. "I should have ended your life yesterday. It would have pleased my counsel. It would have proven my strength, and it would have erased your strange words from memory." Ethan gave a small smile. "And yet, I am still here." Her claws tapped against the table. "Yes, you are still here, because your words haunt me. No one has ever dared to speak to me like that. My enemies call me a monster, my people call me hideous. Even my advisors speak only out of fear. But you called me gorgeous." She spat the word as if it burned her tongue. Ethan did not flinch. He leaned forward slightly, his hands folded. "I did not use the word to mock you, I spoke what I saw." Her eyes narrowed. "Explain." And so Ethan began. He told her about humanity, not in grand speeches but in simple stories. He told her of ancient warriors who bore scars yet were honored as beautiful because their scars showed courage. He told her of mothers whose hands were rough from work, yet their children saw them as beautiful because those hands gave love. He told her of cities burned by storms, rebuilt again and again, and humans called the ruins beautiful because they told stories of survival. Beauty, Ethan said, is not about smoothness or perfection or what pleases the eye. Beauty is about strength, about meaning, about what lasts when all else falls. That is what I see in you. The queen listened, her mandibles clicking softly, her eyes unreadable. Finally, she let out a low laugh, but it was not cruel. It was strange, almost thoughtful. Your kind truly are strange. You see beauty in scars, in storms, in broken things. My people see only weakness. Then, Ethan replied softly, perhaps your people are blind. The words were bold, too bold. The queen's claws slammed down on the table, cracking the stone. The chamber shook. Careful, human, she growled, her voice like thunder. Do not insult my kind. But Ethan did not back down. His smile remained gentle, steady, the same as before. I meant no insult, I only speak truth. Sometimes those closest to us cannot see clearly. Sometimes it takes an outsider to show what is real. Her glowing eyes locked onto his. She expected fear. She wanted trembling. Yet all she saw was calm courage. Strange creature, she whispered, almost to herself. A silence stretched between them. Finally, Scifi stepped back. Her wings shifted slightly as if restless. She turned away from him and looked toward the glowing walls. My council grows restless, she said. They demand your death. They say if I keep you alive, it shows weakness. They say I am soft. Ethan tilted his head. And why? The days in the alien palace moved strangely for Ethan. There were no clocks, no sunrise or sunset. The walls glowed the same pale green at all times, and the air never changed. But he could feel time passing in the rhythm of footsteps, in the guards who changed shifts, and in the way the queen called for him again and again. Each day the guards would lead him to her private chamber. No throne, no court, no audience, just her, waiting with sharp eyes and endless questions. At first, Scifi asked only about humans, what they ate, how they fought, how they lived. But slowly, her questions changed. What do humans call beautiful? She asked one day. Ethan smiled softly. That depends. Some call flowers beautiful, others call fire. Some find beauty in music, in art, in faces, and some find beauty in things that others fear. Her mandibles clicked in thought. Fear. My kind see only horror in me. And you, human, you smile. He did not answer. He only looked at her with the same calm expression, and that silence was answer enough. The queen grew restless. She began, walking during their talks, her claws clicking against the stone floors. Her wings shifted often, opening slightly before folding again. She was no longer the still, cold statue that sat on a throne. Around Ethan, she moved like a storm contained in a cage. You confuse me, she admitted one day. Your kind is weak, fragile, and yet, your words stay with me when even the screams of enemies fade. Why? Because truth lasts longer than fear, Ethan said simply. Her eyes narrowed. And you think your truth is stronger than my empire? I think your empire will crumble one day, Ethan answered softly. But what I tell you now, about beauty, about strength, that will remain long after walls fall. The queen hissed, but she did not strike. Instead, she leaned closer, her face so near that Ethan could see the faint cracks in her dark shell. Scars, marks of battles she had survived. Do you think me weak? She asked. No, Ethan said, his voice steady. I think you are the strongest person I've ever met. But strength does not need to hide. It does not need to be cruel. Sometimes, strength is in showing what others cannot see. Her mandibles twitched. She turned away sharply as if his words burned her. Ethan noticed changes. The guards who once looked at him with hatred now looked with unease. They could see the queen's behavior shifting, even if they did not understand it. Rumors spread. Whispers filled the halls. Some said the queen was bewitched. Others said she was weak. A few feared she was planning something far greater. Ethan could feel the tension. He knew his life balanced on a thin thread, yet still he smiled whenever he saw her. One evening, Seraphis entered his chamber instead of calling him to hers. The guards froze at the doorway, unsure if they should follow. She dismissed them with a wave, stepping inside alone. Ethan looked up from his stone bed, surprised. A queen in her prisoner's chamber, that is rare. Silence, she hissed, though not with true anger. She stood tall, her wings brushing the glowing walls. For a moment, she said nothing. Then, quietly, she spoke. "Do you know what my people call me?" Ethan shook his head. "They call me the Black Widow. They call me the Devourer. They call me the Hideous Crown. Even my own council has never used my name without mockery behind closed doors. To them, I am a weapon, not a leader. A monster, not a queen." She paused, her glowing eyes fixed on the floor. "And yet, you call me something else." Ethan stood, careful not to move too close. His voice was calm. "Because you are something else." Her claws curled tightly. "Why do your words matter to me? You are just one man, a fragile human who should mean nothing." "Perhaps," Ethan said gently, "but perhaps I am the first voice that ever spoke to you without fear." Her eyes lifted to his. For a moment, something unguarded flashed there, something soft, almost hidden. Then she snapped her wings open, filling the chamber with shadow. "Do not mistake my curiosity for weakness, human. If you ever try to twist my thoughts, I will end you." Ethan nodded. "I believe you," and then calmly he smiled again. The queen left quickly that night, her steps heavier than before. The guards watched her go, whispering nervously. In the days that followed, she grew even more restless. She called Ethan more often, asked more questions, listened more closely, and each time when he spoke, her sharp claws stilled. Her glowing eyes softened. Just for a breath. Just for a heartbeat. But danger was growing. In the high council chambers, her advisors whispered. A tall warlord with crimson armor slammed his claw against the table. "This human weakens her. Every day she spares him. Every day she listens to his lies, her strength fades. Soon she will lose the respect of the people." "We must act," the others murmured in agreement. Plans began to form. Ethan did not know it yet, but enemies were already moving in the shadows. One night, as Seraphis and Ethan spoke, she asked a question she had never dared before. "Human, if you were free, would you return to your people at once?" Ethan thought for a moment. "I would like to see my people again, but I would not rush to leave." Her mandibles twitched in surprise. "Why?" "Because there is something worth staying for," he said simply. Her wings trembled slightly. She turned away, hiding her face. "You speak dangerous words." "Truth is always dangerous," Ethan replied. For a long time she said nothing. The chamber was silent except for the faint hum of the glowing walls. Then at last she whispered, "Strange human." And though her voice was sharp, there was no anger in it, only something softer. That night, as Ethan returned to his chamber, the guards exchanged looks. They had seen the queen's expression. They had seen how her eyes lingered on the human. The whispers grew louder, but in her private throne room, when she was finally alone, Queen Seraphis sat in silence. For the first time in centuries, she touched the scars on her shell, not with shame, but with thought. She remembered Ethan's words. "Strength is beauty. You are more than what they call you." And for the first time in her life, she wondered if he was right. Ethan lay on his stone bed, staring at the glowing ceiling. His smile lingered. He knew walls were breaking, not of stone, but of the heart. And though danger surrounded him, though whispers filled the halls, he felt no fear. Because he had seen it, the smallest spark of change in the queen of monsters. And, once a spark is lit, it can never truly die. The palace of Seraphis had always been a place of silence and fear. Servants walked with heads bowed, Soldiers stood with rigid backs, and no one dared to speak unless commanded. But lately, a new sound spread through the halls, whispers of the human. At first they were only small murmurs. The queen spares him. The queen listens to him. But soon they grew bolder. The queen has grown weak. The human poisons her mind. Ethan did not need to hear the words to know something was changing. He could see it in the guard's eyes. He could feel it in the way soldiers gripped their weapons tighter when he passed. And sometimes, in the quiet of his chamber, he thought he heard footsteps pause outside his door, watching, waiting. But still, every day the queen called for him. That evening the chamber glowed dimly as Seraphis paced before him. Her wings twitched restlessly, opening and folding again. She was unsettled. "My counsel grows louder," she said sharply. "They demand your execution. They say I risk everything by keeping you alive." Ethan sat calmly on the stone bench. "And what do you say?" Her glowing eyes flicked toward him. "I say nothing. For the first time, I do not know." Ethan's smile was small but steady. "That means you are thinking, not just reacting. That is strength." Her mandibles twitched. "You call hesitation strength?" "Sometimes," Ethan replied. "A ruler who kills without thought is weak. A ruler who questions is strong." The queen hissed softly, turning away. But she did not dismiss him. That night, as Ethan was escorted back to his chamber, the attack came. The guards leading him were loyal to the queen, but shadows moved quickly in the hall. A group of armored assassins, their shells painted in war. Markings leapt from the darkness. Blades flashed. One guard fell instantly, his chest pierced. The other shouted, raising his weapon, but he was quickly overwhelmed. Ethan stumbled back as claws reached for him. He had no weapon, no armor, only instinct. He grabbed a broken shard of the fallen guard's spear and swung wildly. The assassins hissed, amused by his attempt. But before they could strike him down, a roar filled the corridor. The queen, Seraphis, stormed forward. Her wings spread wide, her claws glowing with deadly light. She moved with terrifying speed, tearing through the assassins like a storm of blades. Their screams echoed down the halls until silence fell. Ethan stood frozen, the shard trembling in his hand. Blood pooled around him, though none was his own. The queen looked at him, her chest heaving. For a moment her burning eyes softened. You fought." Ethan dropped the shard, breathing hard. "I only did what I could." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You could have run. You did not. You stayed." Ethan gave a faint smile. "Running never changes anything." Her claws hovered near him, as if she wished to touch his face but dared not. Then she pulled back sharply. She turned to her guards, who had rushed in after hearing the noise. "Remove these traitors," she commanded, her voice thundering, "and double the patrols." The soldiers obeyed at once, dragging the bodies away. The queen's eyes lingered on Ethan for a long moment. Then she spoke, softer. "You are injured." Ethan looked down and noticed a shallow cut across his arm, where an assassin's blade had grazed him. It was not blood trickled as. The palace was never quiet anymore. Once silence had ruled the halls. Soldiers marched in order, servants obeyed without sound, and fear kept every tongue still. But now, whispers spread faster than fire. Everyone spoke of the human. Everyone spoke of the queen who no longer acted as she once did. Some whispered in wonder, others whispered in anger, and many whispered in fear. Ethan knew he had become a spark in the middle of a storm, and storms never stayed calm for long. The council met in secret. In the largest chamber beneath the palace, the warlords and advisors gathered. Torches burned along the walls, casting long shadows on their insect-like faces. The crimson-armored warlord stood at the center. His voice thundered. "Our queen has lost her way. She listens to the human. She spares the human. She lets him poison her mind. Already our soldiers question her. Already our enemies sense weakness. If we do not act now, the Empire will collapse, another counselor hissed. What do you suggest? The warlord slammed his claw on the table. We challenge her. By the old law, any ruler unfit to lead can be tested in combat. I will face her before the court, and I will crush her. Then the Empire will be strong again. The chamber filled with approving clicks. The law was ancient, and none could deny it. A queen who refused the challenge would lose all honor. The plan was decided. The next morning, Seraphis called Ethan to her side. She did not sit on her throne this time. She stood tall in her battle armor, dark and sharp like the edge of a blade. They have forced my hand, she said, her voice low. By the law of the Empire, I must accept the challenge of the Crimson Warlord. If I refuse, I lose my throne. If I lose my life. Ethan's calm face grew serious. And if you win? Then I remain queen, she said. Her glowing eyes narrowed. But victory is not simple. The warlord is strong, and the council already doubts me. Even if I defeat him, they will call me weak for keeping you alive. Ethan stepped closer. His voice was steady. Then fight not for them, fight for yourself. Fight for the truth you already know. Her mandibles twitched. And what truth is that, human? That your strength does not come from cruelty, Ethan said firmly. It comes from who you are. Show them that. For a long moment, Seraphis stared at him. Then slowly, she nodded. The arena was filled with soldiers, nobles, and counselors. The air was hot with the energy of thousands of voices. Above them all, the sky burned red as the suns of the Empire set. At the center of the arena stood the queen, her dark wings spread wide, her claws gleaming. Across from her stood the Crimson Warlord, his armor thick, his mandibles sharp. He raised his claw and shouted for all to hear. Behold, a queen who listens to a fragile human, a queen who forgets our ways. Today I prove she is unfit to rule. The crowd hissed in agreement. Ethan stood far above in the viewing balcony, surrounded by guards. He could not move closer, but his eyes never left the queen. He knew this battle was more than blood and claws. It was about faith, about whether she truly believed what he had told her. The drums sounded. The trial began. The warlord charged first, his claws slamming into the ground with enough force to crack stone. He struck hard and fast, his crimson armor flashing. Seraphis dodged, her wings carrying her high. She landed behind him and struck, her claws slicing across his back. Sparks flew, but the armor held. The crowd roared. The warlord laughed. You are slower than I expected, queen. He swung again, catching her side. The force sent her skidding across the arena floor. The crowd gasped. Ethan's hands tightened on the railing. But when the dust cleared, Seraphis stood tall again. Blood trickled from her shell, but her glowing eyes burned brighter. She spread her wings and spoke, her voice echoing across the arena. You call me weak because I listen. You call me hideous because I am not like you. But I am still your queen, and I will show you that true strength is not in cruelty. It is in never breaking. Her words shook the arena. The warlord roared in fury and charged again. This time, Seraphis did not dodge. She met him head-on. Claws clashed, sparks filled the air, and the sound of their battle shook the ground. Blow after blow, the warlord pressed her back. But Seraphis did not fall. She absorbed his strikes, turned his strength against him, and struck with precision. Finally, with a powerful cry, she drove her claw through his armor, piercing his chest. The warlord staggered, gasped, and fell to the ground. Silence filled the arena. Seraphis stood tall, wings wide, her claws dripping with victory. Her glowing eyes scanned the crowd. Do you see now? She thundered. I am your queen not because I kill, but because I endure. I am still here. I rise when others fall. That is strength, that is beauty. And no human, no alien, no council can take that from me. The crowd erupted. Some cheered, some hissed, but none could deny her victory. Ethan smiled from above. His heart pounded, but his face was calm. He knew she had not only won the battle, She had proven herself. After the trial, she returned to the palace, her armor scarred, her body wounded but unbroken. She entered her chamber where Ethan waited. For a moment she said nothing. Then she spoke, her voice softer than ever before. "I should thank you," she admitted. Ethan shook his head. "You needed no help. You already had the strength." Her eyes locked on his. "But you made me believe." For the first time, she allowed her claw to rest gently against his hand, not in threat but in trust. "You are dangerous, human," she whispered. "Not because of your weapons or your power, but because of your smile. Because you make me see myself in ways I never dared." Ethan's smile grew warmer. "Then perhaps that is what humans are best at. Not fighting, not conquering, but reminding others of who they really are." Her wings trembled. She pulled back quickly, hiding her emotions. "Do not grow too bold, human." But Ethan only chuckled softly. Too late. That night, as the palace grew quiet again, Scifi stood on her balcony. The stars stretched endlessly above, cold and eternal. But for the first time, she did not feel alone beneath them. She had faced her trial. She had proven her strength. And, somewhere deep inside, she knew it was not only her empire that had changed, it was her heart. The empire did not rest after the trial. The warlord's defeat spread through every planet under the queen's rule. Some worlds celebrated her victory, shouting her name as proof of her unmatched strength. Others murmured in doubt, saying she had become strange, changed by the human she kept alive. But no one could deny one truth. Queen Scifi was still on the throne, and she had proven she was unbreakable. Inside the palace, life shifted. The guards who once glared at Ethan now avoided his eyes. The servants who once whispered about him now bowed quietly. None dared to touch him, because all knew the queen herself had chosen to protect him. Yet Ethan did not act proud. He moved with the same calm steps, spoke with the same quiet voice, and smiled with the same warmth. And that smile continued to disturb and inspire Scifi more than anything else. One evening, the queen summoned Ethan not to her chamber, but to the grand balcony of the palace. The two stood side by side looking out across the alien city. Towers of black stone rose into the sky, glowing rivers of energy flowed through the streets, and thousands of insect-like subjects moved below. Scifi's wings shifted slowly in the cool air. She broke the silence first. "Look at them," she said. "My people. For centuries they obeyed me out of fear. They saw me as a monster. Now they wonder if I am still the same monster, or something else." Ethan's calm eyes scanned the Torisingdom. "And what do you see when you look at them?" She was silent for a long moment. Finally, she admitted, "I see a people who deserve more than fear. I see a throne that must stand for more than cruelty." Her claws gripped the railing. "But if I change too much, they will see it as weakness. If I change too little, I will remain the creature they despise." Ethan turned to her, his smile, soft but steady. "Then be both. Be strong enough to rule and wise enough to care. That balance is what makes a true leader." Her glowing eyes searched his face. "You speak as if it is so simple." "It isn't," Ethan said gently. "But you don't have to do it alone anymore." For a moment the queen froze, her wings twitched. She looked away quickly as if hiding something sharp and vulnerable in her expression. The council did not stop their schemes. Though the Crimson Warlord was gone, others rose to take his place. They plotted in shadows, waiting for the queen to stumble again. But Scifi did not stumble. Each time she entered the council chamber, she carried herself taller, her voice sharper, her decisions more balanced. She was still fierce, still dangerous, but there was a new fire behind her words, a fire that came not from cruelty, but from conviction. And Ethan's quiet presence became her shield. She never admitted it to the council, but the strength she showed came from the belief he had given her. One night Scifi returned to Ethan's chamber. He was resting, lying on the stone bed, eyes half closed. "You are too calm for a prisoner," she said. her voice cutting through the silence. Ethan opened his eyes, smiling faintly. Perhaps because I don't feel like one. Her mandibles twitched. Strange human, you should fear me more than anyone. But I don't, Ethan said softly. Because I see you for who you are. Those words struck harder than any weapon. She turned away, her wings trembling slightly. You should not speak so boldly. Ethan's voice was gentle but firm. And yet I will. For the first time, Seraphis felt her breath falter. No army, no warlord, no enemy had ever shaken.